paid advertisement, but I've had some good experiences, good professors there, so I highly recommend that one. What I'm doing today was a big focus in one of my classes last year, was all about student profiles and surveys, and using the kind of the non-academic side of it too, to inform our academic decisions in the classroom, and really getting to know our students on a deeper level, not just surface level, not just numbers, not just data, but really knowing them as a person, what their wants, what their needs are, what their own perceptions of their needs are, getting the input directly from the students as to what do I need help with, what's going to make me grow, what's going to motivate me in the classroom, all of that stuff. So I think that's a big part that we don't always hear about when it comes to data collection, is the human side of it. So that's a big focus on what I'm doing today. Blended learning, I've been doing blended learning, some version of blended learning for like the past 7 years. I started with implementing the flipped classroom model just kind of on my own several years ago when I taught third grade. So I even did that with my third graders. They helped me start it out, and I did it in math for a few years. And then I moved up to fifth grade, and now I teach language arts and social studies. So I've been doing still the flipped classroom model, and that's what Ms. Osuna was talking about, that I'll be presenting at the Teach conference on, is creating our own videos for the flipped classroom, but that's another part of it. But that's just kind of my background and kind of my experience with blended learning, starting it out kind of on my own, and then of course growing in my experience, and then now formally earning my degree in blended and personalized learning. So I'm happy to share what I know and what I do, and so here we are. So today we're going to talk about building those connections, like I said, through the use of student profiles and surveys in the classroom. So first, why do it? First, to clarify, what a student profile, at least in the way that it was defined through my courses at Texas Tech, is really the whole thing. What we call like the data notebooks or data folders is what's included in what a student profile is. So a profile is usually something that gives you information about a person, who they are, what they need, all of that. So we call them more data notebooks or data folders. And this piece, what I really want to add is the use of the surveys within those student profiles and how they can add to what we've already been using and what I've seen at a lot of campuses. I've taken ideas from a lot of campuses as far as those data notebooks, and this is just an additional piece that we can add to try to kind of complete the picture of who our students are and how to help them. So when we do these surveys to complete our student profiles, it facilitates a conversation with our kids. I mean, there's really no better way to get to know them besides talking to them. And this just gives a framework for how to have those conversations and how to lead them and facilitate them so you can get the most out of it. Like I said, it digs deeper into the student's personality. We know how much of an impact a student's personality can make on their instruction, right? On paper, two students can have the same scores, but when you're in the classroom, the way they get there can look completely different just because of what type of person they are and what kind of learner they are and what makes them comfortable, what motivates them. Everything can look completely different. So this is really getting to know that part of it. It really opens the door to involve the parents. We're always wanting to have parents help us and push their students and all of that. And this kind of thing really opens up the lines of communication and helps build the trust with families when they know that you really care about getting to know their student, their child as a person and not just as another name on your roster. And it gives us actually actionable data. It gives you something. I think, we're getting away from data being just numbers. Data is anything that can inform us, and this is really giving us that piece of it, and it really gives you something actionable. It gives you information that you can use immediately in the classroom, and it can be academic and non-academic. One of the big things that another one of my courses focused on was that non-academic data and how we should be integrating it into our instructional decisions on a daily basis, really, but as a whole picture, and not just focusing on just the numbers we get on Eduphoria or any of that stuff. STAR test, that's all important, but there's more to it than that. And I think most of us already know that. We do that subconsciously, but this is just putting it down on paper to make sure that we cover all our bases and we hit everything that we can. So that's why we should do it. I want to just start out straight out. I said on there, that I would give you guys some uh, ready-made resources that you can take with you today and hopefully implement like this next week coming up. I have lots of different links on here. I'm going to go through a couple of them just to show you, but the first two, the profile sheet and the SMART goal setting, and each of those SMART goal and setting is a different link. I just couldn't know how to fit it in, so I put it in a different one. But that's, of course, that's a big thing is this one is a basic profile sheet, just asks about the interests, what they like, what they don't like, what they think they need to work on, things like that. And then we have a SMART goal, a couple of different SMART goal setting sheets. To be honest, as a teacher, when I first started learning about SMART goals, I was not a fan of them because they didn't make sense to me. It honestly, it seemed like a lot of stuff on paper and it didn't make sense until I started seeing it, how I would use it with my students. Then I was like, oh, that's what they've been talking about this whole time. So hopefully the sheets that are on there are simple enough to use. I've used them with my students for like 2 years now, and it seems like they got it. Last year was a little bit of a mess. We know how last year was, so it wasn't a full practice year, but that's there. The second one is another learner profile template. This one is from another school that has it on there, and this one includes the non-academic data, and then it has a small piece for data collection too. And I don't know that this is one that any of us would use immediately, but it's a good one for inspiration to possibly create your own or modify, but it's a good way to start. Like I said, I am a reading teacher, so one of the things I start my year off is a reading survey. That one is on a Google form, and I'll use an example from that one a little bit later on. But this one really asks them about their own feedback on what type of reader they think they are, what they think they need work on, what they think their strengths are, what genres they like to read, which ones they don't like to read, how they feel like they could expand their learning. And so that gives me insight into what their mentality is towards reading, what kind of frame of mind they're coming into reading class with, so I can see if it's something I need to change or if it's something I need to encourage to keep growing. And then the bottom one, I have parent surveys. This is where I said, it's good to include the parents as feedback too. I think, nobody knows this child more than the person who's raised them for the past however many years. So really getting their feedback is so important, and it can be very valuable. I know, from my own daughter, my daughter is a completely different person at home than what she is at school. I had her as a student in 3rd grade, and I was like, who is this child? Like, she's so quiet and serious. And here at home, she's like this wild, crazy child that literally doesn't give me a minute of quiet in the house. And she's an only child, and she does not shut up the whole day. And at school, she was like, all business. So, getting that insight from the parents can give you a whole different perspective on what the child is like, and maybe help you bring out a little bit different characteristics that we might want to use in class. And I do have them in English and in Spanish. And I have a middle of the year survey and an end of year survey. In this one, if you open it up too, you'll see, which I forgot to share the whole presentation. I'll have to share that with you guys right now. I totally forgot that part. You'll see that it gives actually feedback on what they perceive the classroom environment to be like. So this is one that you have to like mentally, emotionally prepare to give out, because you might hear some stuff that you don't agree with and you don't like. Some of it is asking about, do I feel like my child's teacher cares about my child? Do I feel like is my child happy to be in the classroom? Are they happy to go to school? Do I feel like homework level is appropriate? Too much, too little, just right type of thing. So when you first start doing this, if you've never gotten that kind of feedback from parents, it might not always go the way you think, but sometimes you always get some good surprises. Sometimes parents give you some wonderful feedback and they tell you how grateful they are, and you're like, oh, thank you, I never hear that. So it's, you get both sides of it. So it's just, take that with a grain of salt, make of it what you will. But it's important for us to get that outside feedback too. On the opposite side, you have the same, basically the same version. The parent and the student surveys that I have on there are very, very similar. There's just slight differences in the wording of the questions based on who's giving you the feedback, the students or the parents. I have middle of year and end of year. I usually don't do these at the not this type of survey, at least at the beginning of the year, because this is more to help adjust instruction. So they need a little time to get to know you and get to know the classroom before they give that feedback. And then in the middle, I have some student data tracking sheets that I've created. These are ones that I've slightly tailored for use for us. They're titled like East Point adjusted, and I've added some stuff in there. I have those on Teachers Pay Teachers. They're one of my best sellers, but you guys get it for free. We share those resources, right? And they are for first through sixth grade. So those sheets are in there. I'm compiling a folder on the Google Drive too, where I'm hoping I can add a few other stuff that I just didn't get a chance to put on there. But there's a few other like data tracking and surveys that I want to add. And hopefully I can share out that link with Miss Osuna, and I'm sure she can get it out to everybody. But these are some of the resources that I'm going to kind of talk about. Right now, I'm not going to get into showing you the examples. I'm going to do that a little bit at the end, but I want to show you more like how I use them. And then I'm sure there's so many other ways that you guys will think of, hopefully, as we go along. A lot of these are geared towards reading because that's what I teach. So these are surveys that I've created for myself. Like I use them in the classroom and I'm sharing them out. But for those of us that teach different grade levels or subjects, I know you guys can hopefully, like I said, get inspiration from them and make them your own. Like I said, these are Google forms, and I stressed on there, make a copy because they are accessible to everyone. So if you edit the original, it's going to edit it for everybody. But if you go and make a copy, then you can do whatever you want with it after that. Okay. So that was a lot. But and actually, let me show you one of them. I'm going to show you the reading survey just so you can see, because I'm going to refer to this one later. So this is the one that I start my year with. They always do this like the first week of school. And the first is just first and last name, asking them how they feel about reading. And it's just kind of a range. I don't like it to I love reading. How they rate their overall reading abilities to I'm not a strong reader to I'm a very strong reader. Their vocabulary knowledge, I know lots of words or I struggle with them. Their fluency, how often they read at home. And I always have to stress to them, like, yes, I'm your reading teacher, but I'm not going to get mad if you click never. I want you to be honest and tell me if you don't like to read at home, that's fine, because I'm giving you time to read here. I just need to know kind of your background. The genres that they like to read, the formats that they like to read in, because we know we have a lot of kids that don't like chapter books. Even by fifth grade, they're still like, nope, I don't read chapter books. I only read picture books or graphic novels. Graphic novels are a big thing. So to them, that's kind of like a middle ground. How they get their reading materials. This is just me to see how much of a literacy rich environment they've grown up in. You know, do they go to the public library? Are their parents willing to buy them books on their own? Or is that something that I might need to introduce to them? A specific title of book that they might have enjoyed reading or having read to them, a title that they didn't like, and this just gives me a little more insight on the types of books that they're just not interested in. Their favorite place to read, I try to use this too to kind of curate my classroom environment to see if a lot of kids like pillows, maybe I need to get a couple more, or if they prefer reading in bed, you know, how can I make the environment a little more cozy for them? The next one is kind of like a challenge for them. What kind of books would you like to read more of? And a lot of them are honest. They say, you know, chapter books. I teach dual language, so I had several kids reply saying that they want to read more books in Spanish because they don't do a lot of Spanish reading. Something that I can help them in reading with. This is kind of like their goal, you know, do I want more vocabulary or my fluency or whatever? And this really gives you insight into how introspective they are. Like, do they know what they struggle in? Do they even know, you know, what kind of learner they are? And then just anything else they want me to know about them as a reader. And this is just general information. I'll show you one of the middle of the year parent surveys. And this one, I usually give it to them when we come back from winter break. And I just start off with something simple. Did you have a good winter break? Like, yes, it was good. No, it wasn't. Or sort of, because that can also open the door to other conversations like, ooh, you didn't have a winter break. Is there something I need to know? Because maybe your frame of mind is going to be different coming back. If there was some big event that happened over the break, maybe I need to know that. Did their child read over the break? If yes, how many days did they read? Were the kids ready to come back to school? Were they excited? What's something that your child missed about school? What's one thing they dreaded about school coming back? What's one thing they really like about this class? What's one thing they dislike about the class? Do you feel like so far they've improved their academic skills? Please explain. Have they improved their social skills? Please explain. Do you feel like your child has a good relationship with the teacher? And I did put here explain if you want to. Do you think the teacher is fair? Explain. Do you think the teacher cares about your child and your family? Does your child feel safe in the classroom? And is there anything that you think the teacher can improve on in the physical classroom or as a teacher as far as instruction? So like I said, that's why in these I say, you got to kind of be careful what you want to know and what you hear. You might hear some stuff you don't want to hear. You might hear some amazing things that it's going to boost you. You just have to be able to kind of take everything in and do what you will with it. So that's just to give you a quick example. And like I said, I'll share these so that everybody gets to access them and you can edit them if you'd like. So let's say they took that reading survey, they filled it out. And I know I've done this before where we give these stuff and we're like, oh, it's great. And then we forget to look at it and we don't do a whole lot with it. So what do we do now? Now that they took the survey, and I'm going to show you what I'm planning on doing with the reading survey. So the whole point of it is to reflect and make adjustments, right? To use it and say, okay, what can I do in my classroom now? And what that might look like is, for example, I always think of reading, because that's what I do right now, is grouping students for guided reading based on their interest. I know a lot of times we do it based on their levels, which is great. Of course, we have to kind of put them in a place where they're going to be successful. But we should also look at interest levels, because really what's going to motivate them is reading something that they like. If you tell them, oh, you're at a level M, like that means nothing to them. They might be a little familiar with it, especially by fifth grade. They've heard these levels year after year, so they're a little bit familiar with it. But really what we want is to motivate them to do what they're supposed to do. So if we give them something that's going to interest them, that they're going to look forward to, go, oh, I want to go to guided reading today so we can finish reading the book. That's really what we're trying to move towards. Choosing text for whole group instruction that appeals to the class. I'm a big proponent of using your lesson plans from last year for this year, because why work harder when we already have a base to it? But that doesn't mean that we can't make adjustments to it every year. We still have to reflect on, my lesson might be able to stay the same as far as the skill I'm teaching, the process I'm following, but maybe this year's class is very heavily into, right now everybody likes anime. All the kids like anime. And maybe last year the kids didn't. They were more into Minecraft. So I might need to adjust my text so that I'm still teaching the skill. I'm still going through, the process the same that I did last year, but my text is going to change. Just because I know that to engage this class, I might need to change the subject. Goal setting with the students based on their perceived needs. Not necessarily what does STAR tell me that you need, but what do you tell me that you need? If you're telling me you want to work on fluency, well, then let's work on fluency. Even if iStation said you were tier 1 on fluency, but you don't think you're tier 1 on fluency, then let's focus on that, because I know that if you already think you need to work on that, you're probably going to be more motivated to do it because it's coming from you. So going based on what they said. And then, of course, changing our classroom procedures. Sometimes we think something is working really well, but then the kids are like, well, actually, I think we should do it like this instead. Or sometimes it can be as simple like, I think if you move that to this side of the room, it's going to be easier to get to it. And I've done that where I'm like, oh, yeah, you're right, because they're the ones that are using the classroom. So why not get feedback from them? And it just depends on what survey and what you got from them. So, and of course, tailoring our whole group and small group instruction based on overall needs. We have to adjust those lessons. Like I said, I use the same lesson plans. I always bring up my last year's lesson plans, but then I think, okay, what can I do different this year? What can I do better? So I'm going to give you an example of what I've done and what I'm doing this year for my guided reading is grouping the students based on their interest instead of just looking at their level. So these are my real life results. These are my kids' survey from this year that we did on the first week of school, and I'm highlighting a few. I wanted to start by interest, so I went to the question, what is the title of a book you've enjoyed reading? So that one gives me a specific title that they said, I really liked this book. And so I sorted my data by that column. And then I went across to see what they answered on the rest of them. And it was so weird. And you'll see it here, like how similar their answers were. Like all the kids that liked this certain book said very similar things all the way down. So you'll see the ones right here. I chose my kids that said they liked The One and Only Bob. And Miss Graham, I know you're in here, and I know this was from you. You had given them the book, The One and Only Bob, so they really liked it. So a few of them had mentioned that one. So you can see right here, The One and Only Bob and The One and Only Ivan. If you guys haven't read it, The One and Only Ivan is the first book, and then The One and Only Bob is the second book in the series. There's even a Disney movie on it for The One and Only Ivan, in case anyone's interested. We like books that have movies we can watch after. So that one's there. So I grouped all of those, and that's about that's 5 kids that all said they liked that one. And then the next question was, where is your favorite place to read? And notice that most of them said with a blanket, a dark place with pillows and a blanket, somewhere comfy, a dark place where it's quiet. And these were the same kids that answered that, and it was just like, wow, like they have similar interests. So if they already have those similar interests, why not put them together? They might work well. They might not even realize that they have similar interests. So this might help build those social connections too. So that was those 2 questions. The next question was, what kind of books would you like to read more of? And notice most of them said challenging books, chapter books, a book in Spanish. So that tells me that all of them are trying to challenge themselves with something that they don't typically do. And then the next one, what is something I can help with you in reading? Most of them said vocabulary and fluency. Vocabulary, fluency, pronouncing words, which is fluency, really. When you know how to pronounce the words, you're a more fluent reader. So based on that data, now I know that they like books that had some kind of animal involving like a sad, challenging situation, but also involved human characters. Both of those books focus on the animal, but the human characters are an important part of it too. So it's not completely fantasy. It's a little more of a realistic fiction, but with the element of us hearing what the animals think. So it wasn't a complete fantasy type of book. They want a challenge. They're ready to challenge themselves, and they want to improve their fluency and vocabulary. So that gives me already a lot to work on with this group, that they had so many similarities. So based on that, I looked for something that was along those lines, and I came across the book PAX, which I have a copy of it in the classroom already, and I'll tell you about some resources to find, a group set of it. So this one is about a fox, and it's set in like a dystopian nameless country. So it doesn't specify the name, but it's a boy that has a pet fox, but there's a war coming, and the dad convinces the boy that they need to go enlist to fight the war, and he has to abandon his little pet fox. So he throws a toy into the forest, the fox goes after it, and they take off. But the fox sees them, so he's trying to find his way back to the boy, and the boy like regrets leaving him, so he's trying to find his way back to his fox. And so they're both on a journey to kind of reunite with each other. And then it does say that they have it's told from alternating viewpoints. So you see the viewpoint of the boy, what's going on his side of the story, and then on the fox's side of the story. And so the reason that I chose this book is because it also has a main character who's an animal and a human. It's a touching story. They're separated and they're trying to find their way back. It has the challenging elements of fiction, because it talks about war, talks about tragedy, which might be something that I need to keep in mind to kind of prepare them for. But it also has like a dystopian futuristic setting that's going to be a challenge, because most of these kids have probably never experienced that kind of genre. So it's going to be something new for them. And then it has the alternating point of view, which also gives them an element of challenge, because they're having to keep track of 2 sides of a story. So this book is kind of gives us a chance to do a novel study instead of just like the typical leveled readers that we get. And with all of this that I looked at in the previous slides, I haven't even looked at the level that my kids read at. Honestly, I didn't even look at what level they were at. Because in this case, my focus was building interest. And since we're doing it as a guided lesson, I can always help them come up to that level. They have each other to help each other with. They have me as a support. I'm not just giving them the book and telling them go, but this is something that I'm hoping will motivate them, that even if they're not at that level, to get there so they can follow the story, so they can discuss with their group. I've done novel studies before in guided reading, and we don't always finish the book because sometimes I need to move on to a different skill. But that's where I give them the opportunity to continue the book as an independent reading part of it after they're done with me as a group. And this gives them, since it's a chapter book, it gives them a way to continue what we're doing in guided reading outside of me. And the kids really like it. They love doing the chapter books instead of the leveled readers because it makes them feel a little bit older. They're not getting the little books anymore. They're getting like real big kid books now. And so I've found it to be pretty motivating to them. So I'm going to kind of pause there. I don't know if anyone has any feedback or questions or ahas that they might want to share. Even in the chat, if you guys want. I know some of us are done with talking for the day.
The guided reading, when you said based on their interest, that was like, what? Because there's always focus on their reading level. Group your kids by their level. And that was like a big
Yeah.
like, yes.
I mean, I hope we can try it. I've done it, like I said, a couple of times in the past couple of years. And we know that there's going to be some kids that we do need to group them by level. Sometimes you have to, because they're so far below grade level that you need to move them up a little before you can transition to this. But for example, not last year, but the year before, I had a group like that. We always have our low group and then our medium group and then our high group. And I was able to get my low group moved up to this kind of thing where they were doing a novel study instead of just the leveled readers. And they were so excited because they had seen my higher groups doing it all year. And they were like, wait, we get to do that now? I was like, yeah, because you're there now. You get to do it now. And so that was super motivating for them to finally get to do a chapter book, a group literature circle instead of just the regular guided reading that they would do with me. And they, last year, I had some kids too. They created a website for their book. So they had to create a website where they told me the main characters, the storyline, what was interesting. And because they chose the book, they were super motivated to get it done. So that, yeah. Oh, that's so cool. I just saw someone said that in the chat that they ended up reading a whole series instead of just one book. And I am a series reader. Like, I like reading books that have more than one because then I get attached to the story and I want to keep reading it. So that really speaks to my heart as a reader. Yes, Gabby, the love of reading, that's what we want to do. I've always been a reader. I still read a lot. I tell my kids, I was like, I literally have a stack of like 5 books on my nightstand right now that I keep going back and forth on. And then my ebooks that I have on my phone so yes. Yeah, I hope we can try the interest grouping. We have to be conscious of their levels too, of course, because if you have a kid reading at like a 2nd grade level in 5th grade, and then you have an 8th grade level reader, you might not be able to put them together, even if they have the same interest. But, maybe the level can be a secondary characteristic instead of the primary identifier for our groups. Again, I'm a reading person, so I was really trying to think, well, how could you do this for math? For science. For science, I guess you could still group by interest because of science topics, but for math, I was a little bit stuck. So if anybody ever has any ideas for math on how to do something similar, I would love to hear something like that, even to share with the rest of my group. But thank you for sharing, those of you in the comments. So the other part, of course, of graphic novels, yes, I have done graphic novels. I said I would talk about resources. So one really good resource, I want to say most of the schools in the district have like the Scholastic guided reading library, right? And as you get into the higher levels, they have chapter books. So a big part of what I would do is sometimes I would grab a bunch of chapter books from the book room, different topics, different levels, and have the kids look at them, do even like a book tasting and say, like, which group would you want to be in? Which book would you want to read? And that already has a pack of, usually there are 6. So, take advantage of the resources that we have in the classroom already. I have my own sets of chapter books that I use for my novel studies in the classroom, that I've gotten through either the Scholastic book clubs. If you are a teacher, you can sign up for the Scholastic book clubs. This is where you send like the flyers home. They give you monthly flyers that your students can order books from. And then when they place orders, you get points. And after you order, like I think with a $100 order, it opens up the $1 books, and they have good books. Like I've gotten like mainstream novels. They had the book Restart on there, which is the one I'm reading right now. They had the book Insignificant Events in the Life of a Cactus. They've had Amal's Voice, I think it's called. I don't remember what it's called. They have nonfiction books, sometimes for $1. So to get a set of 6, you literally pay $6 for it. Like you can't beat that. Donors Choose, of course, is a huge thing to get sets of books from. And then there's always secondhand stuff, although you don't always get a set. But I know there's a website. Oh my gosh, and I forgot what it's called. But it's a website that sells basically secondhand books, and you can get several copies of them for, yes, thrift books. That one, yes. That's a good one. And then locally, we have the store Books Are Gems. And they have like a special teacher section where they have sets of books too, that you can find there as well. And of course we have Goodwill, Savers, all of those other. Yeah, Savers usually has the specials, buy 3 get 1 free, buy 1 get 1 half off, all of those. So that's always a good place. And you find like brand new books sometimes at Savers, brand new hardcover books for super cheap. So those are always good places. But of course, if you can get it for free, that's even better. So Donors Choose, Books Are Gems. And then the Scholastic book room is a great resource. And then, of course, the second part of this is the goal setting. So they did the survey. They told you, I need help with vocabulary, or I need help with fluency, or I need help with multiplication, because we know multiplication, my goodness, our other teachers, 5th grade teachers, are struggling so much right now because the kids just don't know their multiplication facts. So the goal setting part of it is a really big thing. And this is where I said we want to use the academic and the non-academic data to facilitate a goal setting conference. And I think my goodness, I don't know how to spell conference. I just noticed that. Is that we're trying to facilitate. We're not trying to be the ones dictating or guiding it, but we're facilitating their own, I guess, internal conversation and reflection, and just helping them word it in a way that they can put it down on paper so they can look back at it later and track it. So of course, why do we want them to set goals? Like, well, they already told me on the survey that they wanted to work on fluency. Isn't that enough? Like, why do I need to do another extra step and use one of those SMART goal setting sheets to put it on paper if they already know what they need to work on? The big thing is to keep their focus. We know the kids might say that one day, and you ask them next week, what is it that you said you wanted to work on? And they're like, I don't know. Like, I guess vocabulary, spelling, I don't know. We need to keep their focus. Like, they have a lot of things going on. We have a lot of things going on. So we need to have something down so we remind ourselves and they remind themselves of what they want to do, and help guide our instruction and guide their individual practice, to motivate them. The more they see it on paper and the more they see their progress towards it, the more motivating it is. A couple of years ago, I had a student that for iStation, they would track their iStation levels on their data notebook. And I remember him saying one month, oh man, I was like 2 points away from getting tier 1. I don't even know how he knew that, but he knew that he needed 2 more points to get to tier 1. And so he's like, I think I can get it next time. And then the next month came along, and sure enough, he was like, I got the 2 points. I got it. I reached it. But because he looked at it and he knew I only needed 2 more points. I think if I do this, if I do that, I'm going to get there. And it was enough. And I had a conversation with the parent later on, and they told me, you know what? This is the first year he even cared about his grades. And I was like, I wonder why. And I think a big part of it was just because It was one of the first times that he had seen his grades. He didn't even know how to look at them. He had looked at his grades, he had looked at his data, and now he knew what he needed to do. He knew how close he was. He knew how much more effort he had to put in. All it took was just looking at the data. Um, and then, of course, growth. Seeing the growth over time for anybody as a teacher, as students, is really motivating because it validates what you're doing, right? You know you're not wasting your time when you see that there's progress being made. And I think that's a big thing that the students sometimes don't get to see. I don't think probably for most people here that's not the case, because if you're in blended, then your kids know their data. They've seen their data, they've seen the growth. So I think we all kind of know why we're doing it, but this is just to kind of reaffirm what we're doing. So how do you do it as a facilitator? The first thing is, of course, look over or complete some sort of data collection. And again, we want to focus on the academic and the non-academic. So using those surveys, having those conversations, and of course, gathering our unit test data, our STAR data, all of that together. Choose a format and a place for the goal writing. Like I said, I suggest the SMART goal format because I finally understand it and now I know how to use it. So I like it, and I have that sheet for you guys. But have a format in place. Have some kind of template, something that they can fill in that's visually easy to follow, that they can understand, so that it's not so open-ended to where it makes it difficult to write. These are still kids. And even for me, like I said, if you just tell me write a goal, I'm not going to know what to do. But if you tell me do this step, okay, now based on that, do this step. Now based on that, do this step. It breaks it down and it makes it easier to complete. And then sit with them. Don't have them do it by themselves. Sit with them so you can facilitate that conversation. You can help them with that internal dialogue and have them do it. Verbalize, write the goal and the plan to achieve it. When it comes from them, it's that much more powerful and that much more motivating to actually follow through with it. If we're the ones that tell them, okay, your goal is to improve your fluency and to do this and to do that, they're going to be like, and then that's it. But if they're telling you, hey, I need to work on vocabulary, then if it comes from them, it's already internalizing. It's already starting to come from the inside, and it makes it a lot more motivating for them. And then, of course, monitor as often as necessary so that they can see the progress. Because if we set a goal at the beginning of the year and then never look at it again, then what's the point? It's not really a goal unless you have a plan in place to reach it, to reach the milestone. Yes, they want to know it. They do. They want to know it. Once we get them started, they ask you, when are we going to sit down to look at the goal again? Because I think I did this or I did that. Like, I want to reach it. It is motivating, and you see it. Like I said, all of us here are doing blended learning. So I know you guys know this already. So this is just kind of reaffirming what we're doing. And I'll show you one of the sheets, the SMART goal sheet. Let me see if I can go back to it really quick. This first one, yes. So this is the one that I've been using. And I just kind of took one that I found online and slightly modified it so that it was a little more understandable. So the S is specific, and I do specify here, what exactly do you want to have happen? So I want to reach a score of 2100 on the vocabulary part of iStation, or I want to get a 90 on my spelling test. Whatever it is that their goal is, that's where you put it. Measurable is how I know I will have reached my goal when I get an 90 on my spelling test, or when I'm tier 1 instead of tier 2, whatever it is that their goal is for. The A is attainable, and it says, with the right work and practice, is it possible to reach this goal by the deadline? Because I always tell them we have to work in small steps. If last year they got a 15 on their reading star, it might not be realistic for them to say, on my first unit test, I'm going to get a 90. Because then if the goal is not attainable, it's going to be demoralizing instead of motivating. They're going to say, oh, I'm never going to reach it. I'm never going to get it. So we also want them to be realistic about their goals and tell them, well, let's make this first one, instead of getting a 15, let's double it. Let's get a 30, and maybe that makes it so that maybe they got a 50. And then they say, oh my God, I got above my goal. Okay, well, you got a 50. Let's try for a 65 next time. And then an 80. And then we work up to the 90. So is it attainable by the deadline? And that just really that depends on what they put as their deadline. Um, Realistic and relevant. So it says my goal is important to me, enough for me to put the plan into action. I will follow this specific plan to reach my goal. So really here, this is why I put so much space, because there should be steps. It should be like, number one, I'm going to read every day for 20 minutes. Number two, right now we're working on annotation with Post-it notes. So I'm going to use a Post-it note every day during independent reading to write something down. Number three, I'm going to choose a good spot to sit down where I'm focused when I'm taking my test, whatever it is for them that they say, like, what are the steps that I need to take? And then the important part is the time bound. By when are you going to reach your goal? And I always tell them this doesn't necessarily have to be a date, but it can be, by the unit 1 test. It can be by next month when we take iStation. Whatever, it depends. This always has to reflect on what the specific goal is. It has to reach that. And then this one is putting it into words. I will reach 90% on my unit 1 goal by reading every day, using my Post-its during independent reading, and choosing a good spot to sit so I can focus. I'll reach my goal by unit 1 assessment. So this is just kind of putting it all together in one digestible little piece instead of having this big old thing. Now, one thing I don't have on this part, but I do have it in my data notebooks, is another part that says, did I reach my goal? Yes or no? And then why or why not? So that they can reflect on, yes, I reached my goal. Why? Because I followed my plan. I read every day for 20 minutes. I used my Post-it notes in my book, so I reached my goal. No. Why? Well, I got kind of lazy and I only read like on Mondays when my teacher reminded me, but I forgot to read the other days, so I didn't reach my goal. And that just shows them, if you follow the plan, can you make growth? Yes. If you don't do it, well, I don't know what to tell you. You're not going to do it. If you don't do it, you're not going to do it. I do this pretty frequently, Gabby, and it just depends. It just depends on what their goal is. Now, there is some goals that I tell them, like, okay, we're all going to set a goal for iStation. It's your choice what part of iStation, but we're all going to set a goal for iStation. Sometimes I do tell them, we're going to set a goal based on STAR, because we know all of those are important. They are. We can't put them off to the side. We have to monitor iStation. We have to monitor STAR, because that's going to determine a lot for them. So we do have to focus on those. But that doesn't mean we can't do stuff outside of that too. This SMART goal might even be a behavioral one. If you have a student that has issues with their behavior, they might have ADHD, or they might have a coding for ED, or they might not. They might just be a kid that just messes around all the time, or that loses focus, or that never gets their homework turned in, or whatever it is. So you can set these goals apart from that. And this one, when it's a more non-academic, I do this one more at the beginning of the year. And it just depends on the kid, whether they need to do more than one, or whether it's going to be a year-long goal that we have to monitor. And on the data sheets that I use, I do them digitally, I give them about 10 of these sheets so that each kid can have, as many as they need, and we can go back and check on them on whether they reach their goal or not. I try to do at least like monthly data meetings, and it just depends how many unit tests we had or whatever, but I try to set up a week where instead of guided reading, all week will be just data talks. And they come with me, 1 or 2 kids at a time, and we sit down with their data notebooks and we open it up and we say, is there anything we need to add? Are we ready to reflect on this goal? Are we ready to do a new one? But I do try to set aside about a week, not every month. I try to do it monthly, but it doesn't necessarily happen monthly for this part. We update our unit tests and all of that on a weekly, monthly basis, but for the SMART goals, it just depends on what they need. That's one thing that I'm hoping to get a little better at too, is just the consistency and having them ask for those data meetings when they need it, instead of just always relying on me to tell them that they need one. And the last part here is just with the how can you use the surveys, right? look through the link files, and let me give you guys the link to this presentation now before I forget. I'll put this in the chat. And Miss Osuna, I don't know if I can email it to you too, Miss Osuna, so you can send out the shareable link to the slideshow.
Sure, thank you.
But that's the link right there. You guys should be able to view the presentation now. So I think the big one is this one, slide number 3, that has all the links to everything. Try to make your copies now, even if you're not going to edit them now. That way you already have the copies made and you don't have to be searching for the presentation again later. But you can make your copies now, and that way you have them ready. Like I said, please, please, please make sure you make a copy of the Google Forms before you start editing so you can make them your own. But the student data tracking sheets, all the rest of them are PDFs. So you can just download those PDFs and have them saved, or save them to your drive. And then the reading survey, the parent and the student surveys are all Google Forms that everyone should have access to. And if anybody can't get access, please let me know so that I can do whatever. If anyone can open one of the Google Form surveys to see if you're
Hey,
able
Gabby,
to.
I have a quick question on any of your tracking sheets. I know on a couple of, I forgot which ones you showed Spanish, but I know there's a bunch of them. Do you have Spanish samples in here possibly for lower grades? Because I know your focus was upper grades, but do you have some samples that for lower grade, like K1, 2 maybe, that they could
the surveys, I don't, because like I said, I just linked the ones that I had made for my own use. So I've used these in 3rd grade and I've used them in 5th grade, and I honestly didn't change a whole lot when I went from 3rd grade to 5th grade. But I don't have anything below that grade level that I've personally made right now.
But your tracking sheets or
the tracking sheets, yes. The
Okay.
student data tracking sheets, the purple link in the middle is from 1st grade to 6th grade.
Okay, thanks.
So that one starts. I didn't do kinder because I really wasn't sure how much the kids do themselves when it comes to kinder, but I did start with 1st grade, and it does have like the teaks and all of that stuff on there. So, I visited some 1st grade classrooms that I was just blown away by how much the kids did on their own. Some of these data tracking sheets were like inspired by 1st grade classrooms that we saw during our blended learning visits. So I know for sure the 1st graders can do it because I've seen it. Oh, yay. Okay. The reading survey did allow to access. Okay, good. So you guys can make your copies from there. And I'm sure somebody out there can modify that to make it like a math survey, about their math facts or something like that. And I do have, let me show you guys the folder that hopefully I can share with everyone too. I was working on putting more of this stuff in there. But this is the folder, and all the resources are in here, and I'm hoping I can add a few more. I haven't seen how to share the whole. Let me see. I can probably get the link to the whole folder. Oh, I can. Let me put this link in the chat too. This is a separate one. So this one is just linking you to the whole folder of everything that I put together for this one. It has all of the surveys in there, and I'm going to add a few more things that I didn't put, but it has the data tracking sheets. I have like a list of the student expectations, the TEKs, the SEs that I like to put in the data folders too, so the kids know when it says 5.6E, they can go to their list and say, okay, what is 5.6E? Oh, it says this, 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 and that. So I have that list too, but I forgot to put it in there. And if I have anybody that makes you guys, oh, it has you guys as viewers. I was going to say you can add stuff to it too, but I think it has the shared as viewers, and I'm not sure if I can.
Misha, are you still on the call? Did you share them?
Yes, I'm here.
Site? Oh, Misha, how can she add these to our district resources in our empowered site?
So she would go to that page that has the sharing resources, and then she can either send it as a link or she can upload the document.
Yes, I got the email for that one, so
Yes.
I'll be working on that too. So those should be added in there. That way it's for the whole district.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you.
And
Thank you,
someone
Misha.
asked about the Teachers Pay Teachers one. That's the middle. Let me show you. That's this one right here, this purple one that says student data tracking sheets. That's the one that I was talking about. So you have it here. And let me show you what that one looks like real quick. So these are the ones that I use, and it has goal setting. Oh, this was a big one that I started doing this year, was learning habits tracking. And this is having the kids, I have them reflect at the end of the day, every day, on what they did well. And it says, like, I worked cooperatively with others. I was helpful and friendly and courteous. I followed instructions. I sustained focus. And they put a check mark if they did it. They put an X if they didn't. And then I'm hoping we can see kind of a trend or a pattern. And this is that, like, social, I guess, part of it, where they can see, like, okay, I always have an X where it says I shared my ideas, because I have so many quiet kids that they're like the smart, the high kids, but they're so quiet. And it, I might tell them, we need to encourage ourselves to share a little bit more instead of just sitting there and taking it all in. And then it goes by reading. It starts with Lexile. It goes to iStation, and I have a couple of different ones on there. And then this is where it gets to, like, the unit test and their TEKs. So based on the unit test, whichever TEK that they needed to work on is on here. And then it does the same thing for writing. I have math. I want to say I have science too. And science. I don't have social studies, even though I am a social studies teacher, but I did not put that one there. The part that I said that I was missing is the actual list of the TEKs that says, like, what each of the TEKs are, but that one's there. That disappeared when you clicked on it. That's weird. Do you know which ones it was? I mean, I still see everything on my side. I don't know. I hope nobody's moving the files. I still see them on here. Everything's on there. So again, I even put on the title, make a copy. The folder's empty. I mean, I hope nobody, that would be, I still see it on mine. I refreshed and I still see it on my side. I wonder if I have to edit the sharing.
They're back now. When it was one of I'm sorry, it was the student tracking data sheets. It was one of the PDFs, and when I clicked on it, it disappeared. I was like, oh no. So I don't know if someone put it back.
I know it's always scary when you share stuff with a lot of people, because I'm like, do you know how to use it? Do you know how to not delete it?
No, it was back. All the stuff that I had clicked on is back now.
Okay, good. Like, we have, we always, pick on a little bit. One of our teammates, she one time deleted all the files in our entire shared drive. And by accident, she thought she was deleting it on her end, but she deleted all of our lesson plans, all of our folders, all of our files. And I was like, don't touch the computer. Let me fix it. Just don't touch it. And I had to go, luckily, with Google, you can almost always restore everything, but it was a little scary for a while.
That just recently happened to our social studies team. And they weren't 5 years worth of lessons and activities, and they weren't able to recover it. So I would take off the editor part.
And I'm all done scary.
Accidents happen.
Yes, it does. And most of the time it is an accident. Like, she didn't mean to do it. She really thought she was like, because I told him, let's clean it up, delete the files that you don't need anymore. And she just went and deleted the whole thing. So she's like, I was so proud of myself. I was getting rid of everything.
So it's always a good idea to make to give people view access only.
Yes.
And then they can make their own copy and do whatever they need to with them.
So that's on there. But yes, all of those are on there. You can make a copy, download them, save them for yourself, share them with whoever. But I hope this, I know it was kind of a lot and I was doing a lot of talking, but I was trying to share a lot of stuff. The presentation, I'll add this presentation to that folder. So that way, in case there was anything that anybody wanted to see from there, examples or anything like that. Let me move it now. The presentation is in that folder now too. But I mean, I hope you found some useful stuff there. My email is down at the last slide. Giro Darte 1. In case you ever need resources or any other things like that, I'm completely open to helping whenever. Yes, Gabby. Now we're the only Gabbies.
Yeah. Gabby, one thing I keep stressing to teachers is about, they see you, right, that you've got all these great data tracking sheets, and I think they become overwhelmed. So if you can speak a little bit about how to slowly introduce this one at a time so that people don't become
Yes.
overwhelmed, because we have some
Yeah.
new people on the call.
And it can be very overwhelming. I mean, like I said, to me, I've been doing this kind of thing for 7 years or so. So, it comes a little bit at a time, but I think for a lot of it is maybe focus on one content area. That's how, like, our school, when we rolled it out to school wide, even grade level wide, it was one content area, reading. We started there. For me, actually, I think math is easier because math is so, like, segmented. Reading is a little more holistic, but math is like, this is one concept, this is another concept, this is another concept, and it's easier to track progress there. But also reading, since reading is holistic, you see the growth come, because anything you do is going to make you a better reader overall. So, I mean, that's one thing for me, is start slowly, is using one content area. And then once the kids get a hold of that, if you feel like you can, really, once they know how to do it in one content area, they can do it in the other. But so they're not overwhelmed either, trying to do it in reading and in math and in science and in everything. Start with one content area and really decide what your focus is. 1 year you might just do it with iStation data and get a hold of tracking and just do iStation data. Your goal setting can be just on iStation leveled stuff. And once they get the hang of that, then, the next year, once you both get a hang of it, you can add unit tests and tracking your TEKS. And then you can add math to it the next one. So I think a big thing is just, picking a focus area and starting there. When I started it with math in 3rd grade. And that's all I did. All I did was do the flipped classroom in math, tracking in math. And then the next time I did reading. I started by doing guided reading groups. And then after a couple of years, I was like, well, if I can do it in guided reading, then I can do guided math. So I started doing guided math groups, and the kids were able to transition very easily because they had the procedures already. But I guess starting small is better than not starting at all. So, I mean, anything that you can do is better than nothing.
I have a question on your data tracker for like the science, the specific, like where you have the TEKS.
Uh-huh.
What exactly do you have them put like in for each TEK?
So at the little boxes, and it looks kind of weird there. I'm hoping it didn't mess up the PDF, but these boxes, I usually color code them, and I use the simple like green, yellow, red, because I also use it for Education Galaxy is a big one that I use with this. So Education Galaxy has kind of like their color coding like that too. And they, based on the unit test, I usually get the Eduphoria, the little table for the by TEKS that tells you 30% or whatever percentage, that little option. I print it out and give them like the little strip that tells their data that says, on 5.6C, you scored a 70% proficient. On 5.3A, you scored 100% proficient. And then they come here, and on their test, they input their colors. So they color the little square red, yellow, or green based on what percentage they were at up here. And then that tells them, like, if you were below 70%, that's like a high needs area. And then 70 to 89 is like a middle needs area. And then 90 to 100 is your proficient. So I usually tell my kids to start with their yellow TEKS, to start with the ones that are close, because I was like, these are the less intimidating, the ones that you need the least practice to reach. And then we can worry about the below ones. I usually tell them the ones that are below the 70, I need to work on them with you. The ones that are the yellow, you can probably work on them yourself by just giving yourself a little extra practice on iStation or Education Galaxy or task cards or whatever, because you just need a little bit more to get there. If it's the red, usually that tells me I need to help you during guided to get them to the yellow at least. And Education Galaxy is a big one that I use here because it does have like a part where they can choose the TEK to go to the lesson. So Education Galaxy is a big one that I use there. Thank you, Miss Boyd. Yeah, it takes time. It's been 7 years. When people ask, I've been teaching this is my 13th year teaching, and people always ask, how long did it take for you to feel this like confident? I was like, 8 years. Really, my 8 year mark was when I was like, I think I know what I'm doing now.
You liar. You were like that from your first year of teaching with
No, I didn't know how to fake it.
Okay.
I say fake it till you make it. Eventually, if you act like you know what you're doing, you'll know what you're doing.
And Gabby, Ms. Montero is asking if there's a way to edit the student trackers to reflect checkpoints instead of units.
So these that I have on here is the PDF file of it. The reason that I didn't put like the editable one is like I said, I do have this one on Teachers Pay Teachers, so it's a protected, copyright protected document. But and also I have fonts that I've paid for, so if I give you the PowerPoint, it's going to look a little weird. But I can work on getting like a more basic one that I can send out that's editable. This one is PDF, but I mean, a lot of what I do too is sometimes I find resources out there that are kind of what I want, but not really, and I just kind of recreate them. I was told my first year, it's like, as a teacher, you beg, you borrow, you steal. It's not really stealing, we're modifying it, we're sharing content. So feel free to copy what I have and make it your own. I'm a fan of that. This one is the PDF version, but I know there's stuff out there that lets you convert PDFs. I really have no problem with that. I know it's going to take a little work, but it's good practice too for making your resources your own.
Well, thank you, Gabby. I know everybody. We're seeing the thank yous and the appreciation.
Thank you guys for being
your
here.
time. No, thank you so much for sharing everything that you have and that you've worked so hard to create. So this is going to be very helpful. And you all have her email, and she's doing a great job. So again, thank you, Gabby, because it's these practices and sharing that our teachers want to hear most from. So thank you so much. Let's all unmute and give her a big round of applause. So Gabby, thank you. Woo.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
And thank you all for joining us. Have a lovely afternoon. Thank you, Miss Gabby.
Ms. Osuna, I had a question for you. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Hold on. Let me stop recording. Okay.
Oh, it sounded funny for me. Sorry.